Good evening, folks. I'm Joanne Quijano. I'm the president of our AAUW branch. We're the Danville, Alamo, Walnut Creek branch. And the AAUW, as you probably, hopefully know, is an association international that we support gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. So one of our many things we do is provide programs that deal with women's issues. So that's why we're here tonight, and I'm glad to see all these smiling faces. Thank you. Anything else we need to say? Oh, I know, I need to say that we are recording this. So hopefully if you're okay with being recorded, you've got your face showing. If not, you know, you can mute, you can turn off your video. And then the other thing is that we will entertain questions, but please put them in the chat and we can put them together and then give them to our speakers as we go through the program. So I think that's about it for introduction. Yes. So I'll introduce Betty Felton, who's our program VP, who's put all this together this evening.
Thanks so much. And I'm joined tonight by Monica Witt, who also helped me with this. We had a good number of folks from AAUW who planned and thought about this program. And we are greatly thankful for the people who have come to talk with us tonight. We're going to try to do a conservation. I just was at a conservation event. This is conversation. And our conversation tonight is with 4 local educators. We're, as you know, pretty blessed to have an incredible public school system in our San Ramon Valley. And tonight we're going to talk about the status and the state of health of our school district, its teachers, and its students. And we are really lucky because joining us tonight is, first of all, I'll introduce them from my screen, but I'd like to introduce Chavonta Edington, who's a music teacher at Iron Horse Middle School. No.
Diablo Vista.
Diablo Vista. I go to the wrong place. I even announced the wrong place. Diablo Vista Middle School. But she does a number of things district-wide in supporting music and the arts, and coordinates a lot of wonderful professional development for our music teachers, who are really amazing people. They do so many things. And Chavonta is going to chat with us tonight, yes, about music, but also about the state of her students and her colleagues and the district. Next on my screen is Superintendent Dr. John Malloy. We're glad he's here to join this talk from a women's organization. We also have men as members, Dr. Malloy, so don't hesitate. We'd love to have you join us. The mission is for all of us to develop and support women and girls in education. And Dr. Malloy has been with us, is it 3 years now? 2 years?
Just under 2.
Just under 2. And of course, you know what it's like, everyone, to take the helm of a big school district that's in the middle of a pandemic. We've all had that experience. No, we have not. But Dr. Malloy came to San Ramon Valley at that time, and his reasoned and calm leadership, understanding of so many different kinds of pieces of our public K-12 ed is just remarkable to me. Every time I read their reports and hear from the district, I am amazed at how they have so many balls in the air and so many things to consider, and immediate response to COVID and its restrictions and its parameters. It just amazes me. So I feel very, very honored to have Dr. Malloy join us tonight for the big picture. So that's Dr. Malloy, and my next one is Vanessa Berastain. And Vanessa is in an interesting position. She's both a parent, had a parent with children in the schools. She also was an incredible parent volunteer. came up through the PTA, et cetera. And now she is the executive director of our education foundation, San Ramon Valley Education Foundation, which, if you don't know about it, it's a really interesting support organization for our district teachers, students, and administrators. And that group is the one that does the run. They raise funds. They're a 501c3, so they can raise outside funds and bring them then into the district and to support things that, you know, how much our state funding does not do. Well, the Ed Foundation can fill in for those areas. It's there that a lot of professional development that the district can't afford, but that the foundation can support. And all kinds of wonderful supports for different parts of our school district. So that's Vanessa Berastain. And finally, Mimi Quan. Mimi Quan is the principal of Quail Run Elementary School. And she does all kinds of things too. She has many talents, and she goes and explores different parts of her job, but also the services and things that the whole district has to think about. So I know she's committed and involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we call DEI. And we'll hear more about those kinds of things as we go along, but I wanted to welcome Mimi too. So without further ado, I'd like to start in our conversation. And we decided tonight to kind of go by topic areas. These are areas that members of our group has had questions about and wants to learn about. So I'd like to start right away into some of those questions that I know you've been able to think about. The first question is sort of a general one, and it is, what have you and your constituency learned during COVID? And I thought we might start with Chavonta, because I know that music has been a salve for much of my coping with COVID, and I'm hoping it's true for her and her students as well. So would you like to start with what you've learned during COVID, Chavonta?
Sure. I think the biggest thing I've learned is that in person is best, but that our teachers and our students will pretty much do whatever it takes to continue the online learning. We saw that almost overnight when we had to become these technology experts, because, you know, our students hopped on to the first Google Meet thinking we were just going to play together at the same time. But because of latency, that just does not happen. So I think I enjoyed being able to play my clarinet with my students. And I'd play along and they would be at home. And I hadn't done that in the 22 years that I'd been teaching, been able to sit down and actually play my clarinet every day. We held virtual concerts. Our students would make recordings of multiple tracks, and then we had to learn how to layer all of that stuff. And none of us went to school to become audio engineers, but, you know, we realized that that was the only way to keep it going. And our students needed it as much as we did it. Our teachers hosted music picket days, you know, to drive up, parents would come and get the music, so that we found a way. We didn't want them staring at a screen, so that if we could give them the packet of music, that they could, you know, take their eyes off of the screen for a bit and just be able to focus on a piece of paper the way they would do normally in class. That was sort of a little bit of nod to some normalcy. We had teachers who would meet their students on the sidewalk to help them tune their violins, right? You can imagine trying to learn how to play an instrument for the first time on the screen and not being able to tune it at home, or have parents at home who could help you tune it. But our teachers were there, you know, on the sidewalk waiting and just ready. And then when we came back to this hybrid teaching, and as electives teachers, we had to teach the students in front of us, as well as the students at home at the same time. And I remember just one day, the gardeners had come and I'm outside and I just thankfully I had a mask on, so my kids didn't see me start to tear up. And I was like, oh, I'm so you want so much for this to keep going. But a quick phone call to the office and, they found somewhere else to mow the grass. So it's just really big, just get it all done and do whatever it takes to keep the learning. Our students definitely needed this for social connection. Students would come to my student support time to play games. We would do Google puzzles. They really didn't have any questions about the music. They just needed time to hang out. A lot of them were at home alone or with siblings because parents may have been out at work. So I really felt this sense of, I knew this is what they needed when it was Thanksgiving break and they said, are you going to send us a link? And I thought, well, it's vacation. And so I taught them how, you can create your own Google Meet. And so a lot of them just created those social networks, but it was apparent that they needed the music classes for the social connections. Mm-hmm. And then I know I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to give a thank you to our school district and our cabinet. I have a lot of colleagues who were misplaced or displaced. They were turned into science teachers or math teachers, or their classrooms were taken in states across the country. And I am beyond grateful. My colleagues are beyond grateful that our school district saw the need to keep our electives intact. And I don't know where we would have been today if that did not happen. So I thank you, Dr. Malloy, and thank you to your entire cabinet for keeping. I'm going to start crying. I'm going to stop talking. I'll be, because I can't anymore. So just thank you. I have more to say later. Thank you.
Dr. Malloy, what do you say to that?
Well, I say with sincerity, I was new to the San Ramon Valley when this COVID business started, and I've been a superintendent in 3 districts, but assistant superintendent in 2 others. And I say with sincerity that the educators in this district are second to none, and they hit it out of the park. I couldn't ask for more as a superintendent while we were struggling with every aspect of COVID, but our educators, our staff members, just came every single day and just figured it out. So I'm grateful. And yet there have been tremendous challenges. I'm going to be really honest. We have engaged families, which is what makes our district successful. The challenge is when that engagement, those families don't agree with each other. So I'll put it out there that I am now in year 34 and I have never experienced such intense challenge. And I shared with every teacher, every principal, every member of our staff. I don't care how long you've been doing this, we're all new. We're all new at this whole pandemic piece. So let's let go of all the pretense. Let's not try to figure it out alone. Let's collaborate. Let's put it out there. Because again, as educators, we tend to be used to really knowing our craft and really being good at it, and not necessarily, even though I believe we always need each other, sometimes people think they can do it on their own. We couldn't. And so I think my biggest lesson was it just propelled a sense of collaboration that I've never experienced before. We also learned we could do things that we never thought we could do. Technologically, for example, which has propelled us further. And I also think what it taught us is that, our students are very used to a model of education where adults are with them the entire time. And when we weren't able to be with them the entire time, we learned some lessons that we've got to shift how we do this educational process, because our goal is when kids graduate 12th grade and move to wherever they're going to go, they're independent and interdependent. They understand who they are as learners. They're confident. They have a sense of purpose. They know how to learn. They're excited to learn, and that they don't need us to help them always in that process. But what we learned through this pandemic is our kids are pretty dependent upon us, which I'm glad that we have that connection, but we also need to figure out how to ensure that we're creating learning conditions so that our kids can actually do what they need to do when the adult isn't in the room as well. So the pandemic taught us that, because when we went into that hybrid thing that Chavonta talked about, where some of the kids were in school and some of the kids were at home, Our families struggled because that doesn't feel like school. We need the teacher in the front of the room 24/7. And how can it be accountable? And will the kids actually do what they're supposed to do? Well, I've learned one thing about kids in my educational career. Set the bar high, give them the support to get there, and let them get there. We do not have to walk them step by step as if they're not capable. And that is another really important piece of insight and wisdom that we learned. And I'll speak about this later. It actually propelled our new strategic directions that I'll talk about later, but are very, very unique in some ways. And it was the wisdom we learned through the pandemic that informed that. I'm grateful, though, for our engaged families and our engaged community. And I understand that we didn't always have agreement, but I'll close my initial comments by saying I'll take engaged families any day over apathy or indifference. So that's the silver lining in the fact that there were some days last year where I probably, with my team, wasn't the most popular person in the world, but I looked at the wonderful group that I work with and say, we can't please everybody when we don't have control over what's surrounding us. So let's keep finding what we do have control over. Let's lean into it as far as we can. Let's support each other to the best of our ability. You know, and at the end of the day, I think we got through things way better than people might have predicted. So just a few thoughts on the COVID time.
Cool. Mimi, do you want to say anything in terms of what you've learned?
Sure. And actually, before I do that, I want to echo what Chavonta said. I actually am a parent of a music student at one of the local high schools, and I have to give kudos to those teachers because music is definitely one of the toughest classes in terms of being able to perform, and continue the love of music during that time was really hard. So I'm glad to say that my daughter persevered and the teachers persevered and gave her the education she needs. She's graduating and planning to major in music as well. So that's going to be continuing on in our family. So I think it was just it was a saving grace for us too, because I gave her that outlet for the stressful time that we had. Mm-hmm. In terms of what we learned, you know, prioritizing, you know, what's important, right? You know, we're in the business of kids, we're in the business of people. And I think sometimes we forget to make sure that we are showing our appreciation, recognizing their hard work or recognizing their collaboration. I think that's so key. You know, we need to be transparent with them with what we're doing in our decisions, and reassuring them that even though we didn't have all the answers yet, we were doing everything we could to support our students and making sure that we were a part of a big team, and communicating that really well. You know, we take care of ourselves, take care of each other, take care of our community, and, you know, we always talk about like the C's of education, right? You know, the collaboration, the creativity, the communication. I mean, all of those pieces totally came in play in the last 2 years. And our kids and our staff, we really persevered. And that was learning how to do it together. And that was so important.
Thank you. Oh, this is heartening. How about you, Vanessa? Would you like to say anything about what you've learned?
Yes, I first want to say that I will be wearing multiple hats. I'm a parent. I am a very involved parent in PTA, and I am also in this position as the executive director for the foundation. And so we learned that our students could continue learning virtually, always the best for everyone. As parents, we also saw many disparities in technology access for our students, and we're very grateful to the district because somehow they made it possible for every student to have a device. And not only a device, but some of them even were provided internet access, which was super important. Mm-hmm. We also as parents learn to spend more time with our kids. You know, most parents know that the kids are going to be at home at school from 8 to 3, but many of us had to stay home and parent our kids 24/7, and appreciated what you guys, you know, you teachers do, because it's not easy. We saw families, you know, on long walks, doing puzzles together, spending more time together. And that was definitely a positive from the pandemic. This forced quarantine was a welcome break to many of our schedules and for many of our students too. And so what we think we have learned at the end is that we need to look at those times and figure out if we're putting too much on our kids. Some of our kids are overscheduled. We know that after school activities are important, but they don't need to have them every single day. So what we're hoping, from the parent perspective, is that parents will stop and think about the times that they spend with their family and to make a list of priorities. What do they want to do this month, next month, rather to try and cram it all in 1 week? Because students are tired and we want to make sure that students have time for downtime, for family time, and enough time to do the homework every night, which some students don't. And, it affects their sleeping habits, and they're tired the next day at school. And so for the mental and emotional health of our kids, we want to make sure that parents stop and think about all those issues. And to understand that education is not a race, it's a journey. And we want our students to continue learning forever and not to feel that they have so much now that they're going to think, I don't want to study anymore as I continue growing.
I just have one follow-up, and our time is almost up for this question, but do you think that kids accept what the parents are planning for them? How often are the kids the instigators of that overscheduling and overcommitting and doing everything? And how can we, it's something we might talk about later on, but how can we help parents to do the evaluating that you're discussing and recommending? I totally think that's a great idea. And maybe we can put it on, or what do you say? Put it in the parking lot. We're talking about it later, but I hear that from others and I remember the same thing. It's like, what's really important, family? And let's all think about our own time. So.
Well, Betty, I will say that culture drives a lot of things. And whether the culture is created by our parents or whether it's created by our kids with each other, but there are a couple of things I've learned as a newer member of the community that people, kids in particular, many families, even our staff members, believe if we don't provide kids certain opportunities, they won't get to where they want to go. They won't get to that college acceptance that they're looking for. They won't get to that scholarship that they have been counting on. And I'll speak a little bit later about this, but I think that we need to reflect on that amazing culture because it has wonderful opportunities, but it also has some unintended consequences. And I think it's multi-layered. And I think that we need all hands on deck to think through that, because I would argue as a former counselor that it's also impacting social emotional health. So we can talk about that in a little bit.
Great. I think that's a grand idea. And I think it's sort of the gorilla in the room, isn't it? Yeah, that's sort of the backdrop for all of it. Yeah. Okay, that's a lovely start. Thank you all very much. Let's talk about another item that was on the minds of our members and it is certainly current in our whole society, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know the district's been doing exciting things in this area. And I was thinking, let's talk strategy, if you would. What is the most valuable strategy that, say, Mimi or Vanessa, you all have different approaches to how you are incorporating this very important principle and practice? Because I recently saw something that, I can't even remember. It was a poster that diversity is one thing and equity is a goal and inclusion is sort of the necessity at what we are strategy focused on. So let's talk about that. And I was thinking that maybe Vanessa, you might start out there and give us your ideas in terms of how are you translating what the district and the teachers are deciding to do about diversity, equity, inclusion. How are you translating that for parents and donors and your community members that work with you?
So from the foundation perspective, equity is very important for us. I want to first explain the structure of our foundation is different than any other foundation in the East Bay. We are the umbrella organization, and we have 35 visual ed funds under us. And those ed funds fundraise for their school only. And that is why equity is so important for us, because the funds that we raise are given to the district, to the among the schools, the teachers, as they see best. You know, they go where they need to be utilized. And that's super important for us, that we fundraise. Also, you know, when we provide funds for the teachers for professional development or, you know, music, and Chavonta helps us with that, we know that we are creating equity among our district, because as you know, our district covers San Ramon, Danville, and Alamo, and they are not the same when we talk about wealth. And so the foundation comes in trying to implement the little equity that we can when we can. From the PTA and parent perspective, the PTA's inclusion and diversity team continue to try and do parent engagement to teach parents what equity, inclusion, diversity is. We're very lucky that many of our students know what it is. They live it day to day, but it's a problem when at home, they're not hearing and living what they see at school. And so the goal of the PTA is to engage parents and explain and let them live these every single day, because it's not just attending the one parenting conference and then going home and going back to the old ways. PTA wants to make sure that DEI is included in every single event that PTA puts on. For example, years ago, we used to have the father and daughter dance. Well, we have changed that. Now it is a special person dance. So a child can bring whomever they want. We want to stay away from gender-specific events and programs because that is not inclusive. And when we want to include every parent, that means every single parent for every single child. And because kids were feeling left out. If they didn't have a mom at home or a dad at home, they couldn't bring that person to the event. And also something else that I do, and this is, again, wearing another hat, is I also, participate in an organization called San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition. And with that organization, what we try to do is gather the community and talk about issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity. And we collaborate with the district, we collaborate with parents, community members, because some of the members that no longer have kids in the K-12 system, they also want to have a say, they also want to help, they want to stay, you know, in tune with what's going on, just like AAUW. And so we try to bring the whole community together to discuss different topics. I'm sure, you know, Mimi can talk more about what the school specifically does, but just wanted to share that from parent perspective.
Thanks, Vanessa. Mimi, you want to follow next?
Sure. This is definitely something that I'm very passionate about. We've been doing a lot of work at Quail over the years in terms of having courageous conversations about race with parents. I think one of the key things is that we need to normalize the conversation. Right. I know when I was growing up, it was really about, we didn't talk about race. It was really about being colorblind and not recognizing those differences. And I think that what we need to do is really kind of bring in those community members to really normalize the conversation about race and to be honest with the experiences I had growing up as a BIPOC person in the Bay Area and their experiences and what our kids are experiencing. We've been doing a lot of, like I said, courageous conversations with our parents. We've been doing PD with our staff. We normalize the conversation with read alouds with the kids. And at the heart of it, I really always remember that, you know, if a kid of color is young enough to experience racism, then all of us, all kids are young enough to talk about it. So they're not too young to talk about it. We talk about it in our early grades because it exists and we don't want to ignore that. And we really want to explicitly talk about it and just have a normalized conversation in the classroom with the parents, with our staff, so that we are really open about it. And I think that's so important.
Terrific. Chavonta.
Yes, I want to just say thank you again to the endowment Vanessa mentioned about our PD. We've had some very targeted professional development sessions for our music department. This past November, I brought in Dr. Josh Palkey, who recently published a book on making music classrooms accessible for our transgender and gender expansive students. And we had Jessica Colson come from the district, and she was able to work with the secondary choral teachers to actually change the names of the choral classrooms in the course catalog and in Infinite Campus, so that when a student goes to register, they don't have to see boys choir or women's choir. They'll see ensemble for, alto and soprano voices. Another thing that we are so happy to have foundation support with through the PD is that we had a workshop on Indian music. We serve a large Indian population in our community, and none of us received any of that sort of training in our pre-service work. So we had a really wonderful this past February session, and I'll be asking Vanessa for some continued funds to maybe expand on that. So we really are trying to meet our students' needs, and I just wanted to again thank Vanessa and the endowment for making that possible.
Terrific. Dr. Malloy, do you have some thoughts on this?
I'll just say that from a system level, when I arrived here in July of 2020, we were doing a lot of work in equity. But one of the things that was missing is that our board of trustees had never passed any strategic directions around that. And what's significant about that particular point is that not everybody agrees in our community that we should be doing this work. I'm just going to put it out there as I do very candidly. There is some resistance. I don't think the resistance comes from always negative places. I think there's a lack of understanding sometimes regarding what we're trying to do. But I knew that our board was committed to doing this work, but there wasn't any agreed upon, voted upon strategic direction around equity. And now that does exist. And it states very clearly, each and every student deserves the conditions to be successful. Not every student experiences those conditions. It's not the student's problem, it's our responsibility as educators in a system to remove all those barriers. And we've got to figure out what those barriers are in each unique community by starting with which students do we struggle to serve? I don't talk about at-risk students. I don't talk about deficit students. I talk about who are we struggling to serve and what might the reasons be? And then we get into conditions, whether it's bias, whether it's issues of discrimination, whether it's issues of learning need that we haven't been able to diagnose, whatever it might be. My goal as superintendent is to invite as many people to the table regarding this equity conversation, because it is about each and every student, our board agrees, and not to be pulled into the corners, which unfortunately sometimes happens. I'm going to be, those of you who've met me, because Betty, you've met me, I'm pretty candid. Do you teach critical race theory? Is a question I get all the time. We don't teach that legal, theoretical, university level concept. We do not. However, we do teach that sometimes in our systems, there can be discrimination that you and I haven't done individually. And I'm not asking any one of us to feel guilty about it, because that's the next question. Well, if you're teaching that stuff, then you want my child who might be white to be guilty. No, we're not talking about that. Each and every student, the conditions to be successful, admitting that those conditions aren't always there, and doing whatever we can to remove it. So let's not get pulled into the corners regarding, what we should or should not be doing. But again, in the spirit of candor, I think most of us would agree with that way of describing our commitment. And that is truly our commitment. But I would be remiss if I didn't admit that we still do need to lean in and support our entire community to be okay with this work, because there still is some concern, and it's not San Ramon, it's the whole country,
Sure.
that aspects of this work aren't appropriate in K-12. So we're doing our very, very best to support, to educate, to be courageous, and to continue to invite as many people in our community to this conversation so that we're doing as much uniting as possible, not dividing. So that's just a couple of things regarding kind of that strategic system approach.
Yeah. And would you say that in your strategic plan, your statement at least of the situation, is that every student deserves the conditions to be successful. Is that one of the bases for you?
That is the foundational basis, Betty, and we have data that suggests, and again, I'm also someone who puts our truth on the table. Our students who identify as African American, our students who identify as Hispanic, and our students who we know has special education needs are the ones where the data is disproportionate. And we can't allow that to continue. Now, while we do this work, we still plan on providing an exemplary education for everybody. This is not about some kids being raised up and other kids losing. And that's another one of the arguments that emerges somehow, that if you do this work, you're somehow going to water down something. That's not what this is about either. But yes, you have named what our foundational strategic commitment is.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, going on, our time is, we're just doing very well here. What are your initiatives? Again, I'm thinking of Chavonta, for instance, with music careers, but I'm thinking of career preparation, preparation for after high school, whatever that is. How and what are your initiatives that are going to prepare students, all students, for 21st century careers? You want to start, Dr. Malloy?
Thanks, Betty. And this connects to our strategic directions again. So I hope that the group that's gathered here doesn't mind that I keep going there. We have also clarified through this process that we want to broaden the definition of success on our foundation of academic excellence. This isn't a buzzword. This is really important. We're known for being academically excellent, and I'm grateful for that, and we're going to continue that. But what we're uncovering is great students does not always equate to healthy humans. And I'm saying that very intentionally because we know for our kids to leave us and leave families to go off to college or beyond, we've got to be sure that they are thinkers, creators, communicators, and collaborators. We do the C's, as Mimi said. They also have character, empathy, compassion, citizenship, service. It's not just about passing the test, getting the grade, and getting accepted into college, which is very important, and we're not stepping away from that. That's why I said on the foundation of academic excellence. But what we're embarking on is a way of ensuring that the learning opportunities, it's called deep learning and innovation, and the question is, how is our learning, our classrooms, the learning tasks we invite kids to, how is it honoring their voice, giving them some choice, being rigorous, but when we assess, the old mathematical model of assessment, adding everything up and dividing by whatever and weighting some things and not weighting other things, and you happen to be absent on a certain day and you get a 0, even if you know the stuff, we got to move away from some of this without lowering any standards. And so we're embarking on a pretty significant effort, and we're getting some support to do this, whereby we're simply saying to all of our educators, if we're going to truly prepare our kids for the world beyond us, it's not about learning a subject inside and out, even though that's important. It's about learning how to be a learner. Because I started in my education career at 21. I'm still at it. But as we all know, that's not how it works for the most part anymore. Our kids are going to change their careers 5-6 times if the research suggests it. They're going to need to pivot and move. They're going to need to apply what they've learned from the last place. They're going to need to be seen as someone who is an asset on a team, not just somebody who is a contributor to a firm or to an enterprise. That takes skills that some of the ways we've measured success in the past aren't going to make it. And so what we're in the process of, and we're just at the beginning stages, is to say, what does it mean to keep that academic excellence front and center and help our kids become amazing human beings and ensure that the learning opportunities are not about just knowledge-based tests where we memorize things and ask kids to get certain types of grades when, frankly, we all know as soon as someone's not watching, we pick up our phone and ask Siri. Now, the reason I use that example is because I want to teach our kids to think, because sometimes what Siri finds is not appropriate. It needs analysis. We all know there's a logarithm that's going on in the world of social media that we get what the algorithm thinks we want to see and hear, which is another example of why we've got to teach our kids to think, analyze, apply, not just take in, memorize, and give back. So again, we're just at the beginning stages of this, and I'm excited about the road ahead. And afterwards, if you have any questions about what I've said, I'd be happy to answer, but I'll leave it there because we have other amazing panelists who have their insights into this question.
And I'm thinking, Chavonta, particularly you might respond to that, because music does all those things. You think, you collaborate, you create. So does that broadening of this academic excellence description help you as you move into your work?
Absolutely. And I think it's one of those things that as an arts teachers, we've sort of known all along, and sort of waiting for this global, movement that says, hey, maybe that is the way to go. Just today, we were reading a piece about forgiveness, and the group of 13-year-olds had this wonderful conversation about this composer who wrote this piece asking to be forgiven. And we equated it to what happens if you have to apologize for something you did at the Oscars, or if you're invading another country. And to watch these group of 13-year-old students have this in-depth conversation that came out of this piece of music. I think that's where we see those connections. Yes, you're in band, you're playing this music, but if you can think about the composer's intent and then speak about it with intellect, I think that's sort of that interdisciplinary idea that we have, getting our students to connect everything that they experience. It was also the longevity. And Dr. Malloy mentioned the idea of teamwork. I don't know anyone who is working in solitude, right? It's this idea of being able to produce something as a greater unit, and then the longevity, right? What happens when you stick with something? Yes, you might move careers, but what if you maintain something? And most of our art students will do that. They'll start in elementary school and then will continue. And we know most of them won't become music teachers or professional musicians, but the fact that they have engaged in this particular activity for a long period of time, they understand what it's like to be committed to something, and then we hope that they apply that to whatever they decide to do after high school.
How does that help you in elementary ed, Mimi?
I wholeheartedly agree with both of what they had said. It's not about having the knowledge, it's what you're going to do with that knowledge. How do you apply the knowledge and how do you do it together? And I want to take a moment right now to really give a big shout out to my kindergarten teachers, because it really starts at that foundational level. That's what they do. They figure out, like, how do you have a conversation with somebody about a topic? How do you collaborate together? And you're creative, and you really do need to critically think and show character. And I have to tell you, it all starts in kindergarten. They do such an amazing job setting that foundation for us so that we can teach them those skills later on too. And I have to be honest, is that our first graders this year are really having a tough time because they didn't have in-person kindergarten. They didn't have those opportunities for daily interaction and how to learn together and how to play together, which is so critical. So big shout out to my kindergarten teachers, because they are an amazing foundational setter for all of us.
And introducing learning, I would think, just that introducing the learning and the communication that you need to learn, but also to learn together. So awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Vanessa, would you like to add to this?
Yes, so I definitely want to give a plug for the foundation. So as many of you know, we have a program called Imagineering. It's our after school summer program. And the goal of our classes, we teach STEM classes. It's not only for kids to be engaged in science, technology, engineering, and math. We added the A, we added the arts in our program because we believe that the arts are very important in the life of every child. And so what we try to do is we offer classes in all different topics, but some of them incorporate all of these topics. And so we have like a class called stop motion animation, and kids are doing video production, learning about engineering, and they're also doing art. And it's very engaging. And then this past summer, we offer our first ever theater production class. And it was very heartwarming to see that there was a need for it because kids came out from different parts of the district to engage in this class. And kids were not only singing and performing, but some of them were doing props and they were working the lights. And so it was learning about the whole process and collaborating and, trying different things to see what is it that they truly want or experiencing new things. And also part of our program, what it offers is mentorship. So we have students from incoming second through incoming ninth grade, and then students in high school become mentors during our classes. And if they could become mentors in a class that they know nothing about, like Raspberry Pi and Python. And so not only they are modeling behavior for the young ones, they're also learning the same, techniques and the same program that the little ones are learning. And of course, I would be remiss if I don't mention these. We give scholarships, no questions asked. If a teacher, if a parent asks for scholarship, they receive it because we want to make sure that we're inclusive in the work that we do.
Yeah. And what's the old line about teach it or learn it and teach it? I forget what it is, but it's the experience for the person who is the mentor, or in your case, the juniors in high school. And Science Alliance, you have another program where older students work with younger students. And those are people that will then incorporate teaching and learning into their career, whether it be in business or in science or in arts.
Yes.
That whole idea of sharing your knowledge and helping the next person. Those are character development skills as well. So
Yeah.
it's very
I want to add something, Betty. We believe that providing these opportunities, what it does is kids, they can try new things without thinking about the grade or without thinking that they have to get to a certain standard. And so it's okay to fail. It's okay to learn something and be challenged, because at the end of the day, they're all going to finish the class in a week and they might want to take another week, but they don't have to have a grade behind it. And so they don't feel intimidated by the classes.
One thing I've learned about Imagineering, this program, this summer program that Vanessa is referring to, is how when they first put it up and put it out there, they were besieged with parents who said, of course I want my kid. And it wasn't just because it would be a summer activity or like a summer camp. It was because they knew their kids were ready to learn all kinds of different things, applications and career related things. And so I think the parents have found that to be very, very helpful and sign up in droves. Still, Vanessa?
Yes, we offer many more classes now, but we're very pleased that we can offer different classes for different levels. And so again, not all the kids want to become engineers. And so we can offer an art class. We can offer a cooking class. Oh boy, those have been very popular last year because it's not only cooking, it's the science behind cooking and the math behind cooking. And so it's been very rewarding to see the program grow and kids of different abilities come and try new things.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but these summer enrichments, these are self-supporting, you guys. People pay for these, or as Vanessa said, they can be full scholarship.
Mhm.
So it takes the pressure off the district. So that's in some ways maybe how they could keep some of the electives and things, because it's not district funded. This is
Mhm.
really supported by outside donations and by fees that the parents pay for their kids to do these enhancements.
Mhm. And we for instructors. So it also provides an income for instructors over the summer.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Cool. Monica, do we have any questions in the chat? You're unmuted, my friend.
We have no questions in the chat, so we could open it up for questions if this is something, if anybody has any questions, we can please enter them into the chat and we can collect them.
Yeah, we're in good shape here. So we only have one more question, but maybe this is the time. Does anybody from the audience would like to offer a question? Kathy Hickson, are you getting ready to ask a question? You're muted, friend.
Yeah. Did you see me talking with Bruce?
Yes.
We have a question from the gallery here sitting behind me. And that's in regards to sports. Trying to understand how sports contribute to all aspects of learning being discussed.
So I can jump in and say that athletics are a significant part of our learning experience. It certainly inspires, it engages, it teaches many important lessons, and it is one of our priorities in the San Ramon Valley Unified School District. Certainly other forms of engagement as well. We've talked about the arts tonight. That is very significant. And clubs of all kinds are very significant, and leadership opportunities both within the school and beyond is also very significant to our work. Athletics, though, is something that is very important, very energized, very popular, and it's something that brings our entire community together in many ways. So it's very much a part of our work.
Thank you, Dr. Malloy.
Monica, it looks like Chris Ritter has a question, or do you want to ask it straight out, Chris?
Yes. I was thinking as a former Pine Valley Middle School 8th grade science teacher, just for a couple of years, I was wondering, what did you do about laboratory sciences during COVID?
It might be.
Mimi, can you do that one?
Yeah, I mean, so I can't speak to the secondary model. I do know that there's honestly, with technology now, there is a lot of great resources out there in which you can, there's a lot of virtual reality things that you can actually use for lab and not so much hands-on. One of the things we did do for our 5th graders, because that's something that they look forward to, or not, maybe the parents weren't looking forward to it, but we actually did our squid dissection still for that year. And we actually sent the squid with the tools and the pan, and we sent it all home. And they did it virtually with the teacher, and then we got it all back and sent it to the next trip. So it took a lot of organizing, but we didn't want to miss out on that valuable lab time. So we were able to do something creative like that for the squid dissection. So I don't know how well they liked having the squid at their home, but the kids seemed to love it.
Great. That's so much fun for the kids to do the lab, and really meaningful, get your hands on this and say, oh, that's how that works.
May I add that with funds from the foundation, we were able to supply, science projects for kids from TK through 2nd grade. I know it was a lot of work, and thank you, Deb Pettish, for coordinating it, but we heard from parents that the kids that were not doing so well in front of the screen were obviously the little ones. And so we were able to donate money to the district, and then they coordinated sending science kits to TKs through 2nd. And I guess parents picked them up, and then they did the experimentation at home.
So I haven't heard, has anybody heard what's going on for the high schoolers? Deb, could you answer that? our big helper on this evening was Deb Pettish, who is on the screen as a participant tonight, but she's such a fabulous curriculum and manager leader in the
Hi,
district.
everyone. No, well, first of all, I want to just echo what Vanessa just said in terms of the Ed Fund just being extremely supportive with regard to purchasing materials for the elementary kiddos so they could do the hands-on activities at home. And then I agree with Mimi, a lot of our secondary folks used a lot of online technology resources to kind of recreate some of the hands-on lab experiences, you know, and they also did have like materials pickup for some of the simpler things so the kids could do some of the simpler experiments at home and then recreate through technology some of the things that are a little bit more complicated. But some of the things that were out there that you can actually virtually dissect animals, things like that are just absolutely amazing now, that are really thought-provoking and recreate that hands-on lab experience as much as you really possibly can at home. And a lot of those things really during the pandemic were offered for free, which was really wonderful. Now it hooked some people in. And then now this year, of course, we have to pay for them, but a lot of the resources were really great and were offered for free to teachers. So but you know, was it an ideal experience? No, absolutely not. Was chemistry especially difficult to do? Yes, it was.
Thanks, Deb. Awesome. Okay, Monica, any more in the chat? Okay, so we'll go ahead with our last question. We're right on time here, but I wanted to ask about what has all been on our mind during the pandemic, and that, of course, is the mental health. I think of mental health of the teachers because I have one, my daughter, and I feel like every family and every student and every educator is experiencing depression, loss, sadness, all of the feelings, the whole thing. And I just wanted to know if you as a group and you as teachers and educators have kind of developed some particular strategies for enhancing mental health for all of you. And Mimi, you said you might start with this one.
Sure. You know, I think we all recognize the hierarchy of needs, right? We all feel that need to feel connected and be part of that community so we feel safe and we're ready to learn. I think that really is the crux of elementary school, right? Really building those classroom communities from the upfront from the beginning of the year. But it really goes beyond just the classroom community. It's to the grade level, it's to the school, it's really involving the parents, because it really is the community partnership that we have that we need to support our students and have them be in a safe place to learn. We've always had the Rainbow Room and the skip counselors from the Discovery Center, which I'm so grateful for. And this year we got elementary school counselors, and that was so important for us. And I'm so excited to have them and so grateful for them. It's one of those things that we really need to recognize and again, normalize that conversation too. Just yesterday, we had our school-wide assembly. We have one every month, and we talk about the character traits, and we launch into the next one for the following month, which is for us, perseverance. And I took a moment to really recognize that our kids, our youngest kids, they also persevered this pandemic for the last 2 years with us, just like we did. They persevered as well, but they don't have those skills like we do. They don't have the skills developed yet to handle those big emotions. Right. And that's why I think it's so key and so important that we provide supports for them at the elementary level so that we can teach them how to handle those big emotions in a healthy way and really be able to talk about it and be open about it. And I think it's just so critical for all of us as a community. We've all been through a really tough 2 years, and we need to recognize our kids have too. And sometimes they're not able to talk about it yet because they don't have the words to articulate it. And then they don't have the skills to handle those emotions yet. So definitely great strategies to just always remember that and normalize that conversation.
Chavonta.
Coming from a middle school perspective, we've had a couple of wellness days, and our students have really looked forward to these. They were encouraged to leave their backpacks at home and just come to, sometimes they might take a class and just sit and color for 45 minutes. They might want to bring a book that they don't necessarily have to read for their courses. I've held guitar classes or ukulele classes, just some time to be on your school campus where traditionally you're there, right, with this, academic focus, but to be in that same environment and to be told, no, you can one, choose what you want to do, right? And that the focus is on just relaxing. And our students continue to talk about the two that we've had so far. I know a lot of my colleagues have turned to these low stakes activities because they want them, similar to what Vanessa was saying, just try something out, very low stakes, to not have, grading attached to these sorts of things. And that you see that in our student support sessions also. Some of them are academic, but some of them are just coming. We had one where they would write letters to elderly people who might be in a retirement home, right? So reaching out in the community, but just finding ways while students are on campus for them to sort of unplug from any academic rigor that they might be experiencing.
That sounds like such a cool idea. I'm thinking of low stakes athletics and having the athletes play with kids who don't do athletics. Those are all great wellness ideas. Cool. Dr. Malloy, did you want to speak next?
Thanks, Betty. Social emotional well-being broadly is another one of our pillars in the strategic directions, and it's not separate from learning. In other words, we do, as I said earlier, want to teach our kids, support our kids to be strong people and to help them be confident people. And that doesn't happen unless we're also teaching them to be compassionate and empathetic people with our families, by the way. This isn't just a school's job. And so what we found is, especially as we've come back after the pandemic, is that, let's put it out there, many of us struggled. And certainly our youngest learners who have the least amount of strategies just because of the fact that they haven't been on this planet for that long, we've been really concerned. And we're seeing some of the reactions and the behaviors. Like some of our kids weren't in school for 1.5 years. Some of them were never in school, and now they're in 2nd grade without all of those rhythms and routines. They socializing with one another. Well, when you're spending a lot of your time in your house with your family and maybe some outside time with neighbors in the community, being in school is a whole different story. So that's kind of like our youngest people. Our middle and high school students, many of them have shared with us a profound sense of sadness regarding what's happened, or a sense of disconnection or disappointment, especially those that graduated in 20 and 21, for example. They felt that they lost out on something. And again, as I shared with the greatest amount of respect, some of the adults in our community, and maybe some of us, struggled as well, and that impacted kids too. So our goal is to provide specific supports like counselors, like social workers, like the Rainbow Room, as Mimi suggested, and the wellness centers in our high schools that we're looking to expand. We're also continuing to support how we build social emotional learning right into the school day. When we're doing language arts, for example, or reading that high school novel, and how we create the stage for kids to actually think about their experience and what it means to be healthy and how it is to make good choices and such. And we're also trying to use different tools to help kids think about their emotions, how to strategize regarding what to do with those emotions, how to communicate, especially with adults when they need help. Because unfortunately, when we do experience tragedy, we don't always know it's coming. And that's all part and parcel of kind of the strategic directions, the tools we're using, and then the supports we're trying to provide. But I think all of us agree throughout our community that our kids' social emotional well-being and our staff's social emotional well-being has to be front and center if our kids are going to learn. They're not separate. They're not either or. It's both and. So that's something we deal with every single day.
So can I add something, Betty? We are partners with the district, and our partnership means we try to help the work that they do. So in December, through our season of giving, we were able to discuss with Dr. Malloy, what is it that you think we should be fundraising for? So we fundraise for visual arts supplies. You might think that in this wealthy neighborhood that you live, everybody has access to art supplies, but not all schools do. So we, and why did we concentrate on art supplies? We think, as Mimi said, many of the little ones don't have the words to express how they are feeling, but we believe in the power of art, and we know that through art, many of them might express their feelings, feel some comfort. And so we are actually announcing it on Friday that, you know, all the money that we're able to fundraise through Season of Giving is going to go to elementary school visual arts supplies, because we want to help the schools with that. And, you know, and something that we've been discussing as parents is we all see the social emotional problems that have developed with COVID and, you know, the health of mental health of our kids. And we've been talking about, we need to normalize getting help. We need to remove the stigma of seeking a counselor, seeking a therapist, because we all know that we could all benefit from a counselor or a therapist. And so, and it's okay for our kids too, even for the little ones. So that's something that the PTA is trying to work on. And, you know, telling parents it's okay. It's okay to admit as a parent that you're struggling and that you see that your child is struggling, and to seek help. And, you know, because I think, and you know, to wrap it up, I just think another thing that is very important for us parents is, and we've been sharing with each other, we need to give ourselves some grace, and we need to give others grace, because it's been very difficult. But, you know, it's okay not to know all the answers, and it's okay not to know what to do, and to reach out for help. But just, you know, be kind, be kind to others, because we don't know what others might be struggling with.
I'm thinking of the piece of music that Chavonta told us about earlier about forgiveness. How neat to be able to talk about forgiveness in these days and age too, as well. So, Mimi, I had a question. I don't know what the Rainbow Room is.
Yeah, Rainbow Room, they're paraeducators, and the district provides one paraeducator per elementary school, and some of us also do external funding for additional para support. The Rainbow Room is a program that actually helps students with social interactions, whether or not they are struggling with something, and trying to work through their emotions, give them words to it. Sometimes they do some art with it, and a lot of times also they teach students how to actually interact together. So for example, they'll actually do like a formalized playtime in which it's like they're going to be playing a game, and then they actually walk them through like how, and coach into, you know, what happens when, you know, you lose at that game. What do you do? How do you handle like, well, that wasn't fair or whatnot. So it really is teaching our kids explicitly those skills that we all need.
Very neat. Monica, I think there's people asking things in the chat.
Yeah, we have a really good question about censoring. So the question is that AAUW has a strong public policy to challenge attempts to censor educational materials. Have there been recent attempts in SRVUSD to do this that we're not aware of?
So I can probably take that question. So the answer is there's very little request for censorship in our district, and the board has in no way entertained that discussion. But we don't actually get a lot of requests for it. We do get some, so I want to put it out there transparently, but our board has chosen not to move in that direction at all. And as you would know from those jurisdictions where censorship is more prevalent, in those jurisdictions, the state has entered into that discussion, and our state has obviously not entered into that discussion at all. So it's not at this point an issue for us. in San Ramon Valley Unified School District.
So I have a follow-on question. Would those issues be raised to the board, or would they be handled at the school level?
Well, I know Mimi, as principal, I'm guessing you also deal with this. So because our board has made it, the board sets the policy. Well, the state sets the ed code. There's nothing about censorship in the ed code. There's the exact opposite. The board sets policy. There's no policies that speak to this at all. And our job as the staff is to ensure that we're following, age appropriate resources. We bring resources to the board for their approval. And all of that is just standard operating procedure for which we have a very polished and effective process around. But that means some people who don't like that will come to the board occasionally and share their concerns, and they have the opportunity to do so. But the board has not entertained any changes at this time. But Mimi, why don't you describe how you manage this at the school level? Because I'm guessing you would deal with this as well.
Absolutely. So the board policy does have book approvals in terms of books for read alouds and whatnot. So when we buy over a certain amount of books, that would be a board approved list. In my read alouds with my students at our site, we do have books that sometimes parents are not as comfortable with. Many times they're around LGBT identity. And one of the things that, when we have opportunities to talk to parents, they do come to me. I have an open door policy, and I really do see it as an opportunity to talk to parents and really listen to what they're really concerned about. Why are they approaching me? And to be able to listen to them and collaborate with them. And, the stance that I usually give them, and they fully understand, is, we want to provide stories in our classrooms that really reflect the world that we live in. Right. So they're going to go to Safeway, and for example, they're going to see a diverse population. And so our books should reflect that. And I also bring in that, we have kids at our schools that identify with all the different types of identity, whether it's race or gender. And I just want to make sure that all of our students feel safe and seen and heard. And when I put it in that frame, I've never had a parent say, no, I don't want my child to feel that way. So, when I talk about having it student-centered and making sure that all of our kids are all of our kids, and that includes the parents too, I've never had much pushback beyond that.
So that sounds more like an education opportunity for you with the parents.
Absolutely, and I welcome those conversations.
That's great. Anything more, Monica?
That's pretty much it in the chat room. So maybe there are other questions from the Zoom room.
Well, I also would like to take just the last few minutes to be able to have everybody do a kind of a asking us, for instance, how might we as a community organization help you to meet both of our missions and to do some of these very exciting goals that you set for yourselves in terms of safe conditions for success. I mean, who can argue with that? And the fact that you are our school district and those are your goals makes my heart sing, believe me. And I think we should all be very, very thankful that we have a school district that reflects my values, and I think most of AAUW's. So why don't we start? Vanessa, do you want to start, my friend, and sort of say what we can do for you? You should put up on the screen the donation page for the Ed Foundation, which, by the way, you guys, if you want your money to go a long way, this foundation that supports our schools is unbelievably valuable. So why don't you start and tell us what we can do for you and what your sort of hopes and thoughts are for the next year. You know, we all know it's going to be better, but if you could dream a little bit or give us what you hope to do in the next year and then how we can help you, that would be a great kind of summary.
Thank you, Betty. Yeah, I've been thinking about my dreams for next year. So first and foremost, we want to continue seeking funding for the initiatives and the programs that the district wants to provide, you know, because we are proud to be their partners in education as the PTA also. You know, we we always talk about being this triangle where the district, the PTA, and the foundation are the three corners. We also want to continue promoting art at the elementary level and seeking funding so that music and visual arts are possible in all our elementary schools. We know right now it was possible because of some extra funding, but we deeply believe that it should be always every year for every child. Also, we want to help advocating for legislation that promotes raising the funding base. And to that effect, I will share with you an event that we want to invite you to. It's called Advocacy Day, and it happens on April 22nd. And you will see a group of parents, advocates, students, educators, and elected officials having very important discussions about education K through 12. And also, and this is wearing my citizen hat, I would like to invite you to participate in the San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition, where we continue with these conversations. On a personal level, I want to thank AAUW because my daughter was a tech Trekkie. So, which was an amazing experience for her. And I think Betty, without knowing, her panel are all musicians or have raised musicians. My daughter's also going to be a music educator. That's what she's studying in college. But I think it speaks volumes of the quality of our district, where kids, they could be very techy, they could be very academic, but we give space for them to develop their passions, to develop the love for the arts. And I think with your help and the help of other community members, we can continue doing the good work.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Chavonta, would you like to go on?
Yes, I think this evening has given me I'm excited to learn more about your organization. There is a big push in the state of California to get a ballot that would almost double arts funding without getting more, without asking for additional tax revenue. And so we're trying to spread the word as much as possible to get enough signatures to get it on the ballot. So the research has shown is that if it gets on the ballot, there's a high likelihood that it will pass. And so we're looking forward to having that increased revenues to hopefully take care of some of the things that Vanessa was just mentioning. And then I'd love to reach out to Betty too, and maybe in an email to see if there are some things that our students can participate in. Do you have events where you're looking for musicians? We have a ton of musicians who are eager to continue to perform, and I'd love to talk to you about that.
Funny you should ask, because we're having a year fundraiser, and I don't know if your students would like to come up and play background string quartet music, but we would love to do it, and we would be happy to pay them.
Oh, okay. Now I think you're speaking their language. So yes, let's talk, please. Yeah.
I'm not a believer in free internships and free student work. I think we would all love to have them come and to also entertain us as we walk around and sip wine. So
okay, sounds good.
April 22nd, whatever you'd like to do, we would love to have them.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll be in touch.
Good, sounds great, Chavonta. Okay, and so also around the advocacy for art funding, is that going to plan to be a proposition?
Yes, we need to get 1 million signatures in order for it to get on the November ballot. And my last, I think we're at 600 something, last I checked, but it's been a few weeks.
Actually, I think I signed that the other day at Concord at Todos Santos Plaza. They have like eight different things to sign. And I think they said art and music funding, and I think that's what it is.
Okay. Right.
Well, and I don't know what I'd have to defer to Joanne and others about how AAUW can help, but certainly as individuals, we could sign things.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And Mimi, would you like to go next?
Sure. I would definitely love to learn more about your organization and your mission. What I understand is that you really are about empowering young women and all of us And I really think that really is in alignment with what I'm hoping to do with my, the elementary students, is really teaching them how to use their voice and empowering them to speak up for themselves and speak up for others and to really find those opportunities. I would love to partner with you to see if we can, work out some things, maybe with some class visits or whatnot. We always showcase different people in current events, and it's even more powerful when it's local people. And I think that would be a really great opportunity for us to be able to partner with you.
Terrific. Well, I know one of our members, Trish Graham, who's on today, she's worked with Pine Valley Middle School, and she's an accomplished artist, and she connects to the town art. And so there's a lot of members in our group that do different things in the community. So let's stay in touch, and we will see what we can do together. Would love to.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. So want to be the cleanup person there, Dr. Malloy?
Thanks, Betty. And, I'm also going to refer very briefly to a couple of the notes that you sent to us. So one of the questions that I always get is, well, you're San Ramon Valley Unified School District. You are teaching an affluent community. You have access to all the dollars that you need. I don't understand what the situation is. So there's a couple of things I want to share with you, which is going to be an ask at the end of it. One, we do have a percentage, albeit smaller, of kids who struggle with poverty. That may be a surprise to many, but it's about 10%, not as large as some communities, but it's here. The second thing is we have families who are way overwhelmed and stretched as well due to all kinds of changes with the economy, and that issue is growing as well. But thirdly, and not something I'm going to go into a lot of detail tonight, because of the demographics of our district, we don't have access to a lot of funds over and above what's called the base grant. We do not get access to most of the federal dollars. We don't get access to most of what's called supplemental and concentration. So even though our demographic may not demand it, we still have some needs. So I want to share that with you because there's sometimes some perceptions out there that we have access to everything that we need because of who we serve. We have a generous community, and our foundation and our affiliates are amazingly generous. Our endowment is exceptionally important, but it's one that is never going to hold us for that kind of equitable approach we're trying to take. One community can raise more than the other. How do we manage it, kind of thing? So to that end, Vanessa mentioned it, I'm going to underline it. We're engaged in a process now called Access to Excellence. We're reaching out to our entire community, especially those who don't presently have kids in our schools. We're basically going to be sharing who we are, what we've been, and where we hope to go. So if you see banners up in downtown Danville and Alamo and San Ramon, it's all part of it, an opportunity for people to share their perspectives with us. We need to get everybody on board because we know our schools are so important for our community, and the standard we wish to provide our kids is absolutely necessary, and we need the resources to do it, which is why I'll just emphasize what Vanessa said. AB 1614, raising the base, means that every district who may serve more kids with challenges still get more. So it's not changing the equity conversation, but we've got to have that base raised. We're like 41 out of 50 of the states across this country in terms of base funding. And then we don't have to worry about the arts like we do now because our board has already said additional dollars are going to the arts first. Like that's already publicly stated, for example. So I'm hoping that everyone across this state educates themselves on AB 1614 so that it makes its way through, because that's going to be a game changer. All the concerns that we personally have in San Ramon about dollars goes out the window with that in terms of, it would be about 25 million, to be honest, for our district alone, if that were to pass as written. And my last comment, which I really appreciate your help on. And I know, Betty, I get to meet with you regularly and I appreciate it, but, we want to be a district who's connected deeply to our community. We want to be open to the feedback, even if it isn't always positive. We want to improve. And we need to do good work for our kids. And one of the members here, and I'm reading, we do our work in equity, for example, because all of our kids aren't okay right now. Some of our LGBTQ kids right now have told me that they're not okay. We've had tragedies in our community. Some of our kids who identify as African American, for example, have shared with me personally how they sometimes feel in our community. Nobody intends for that to be the case. It's not about intention, though. It's about impact. And we got to open these doors, and we've got to be sure that our community gets why we're doing this, which is why I took so much time earlier on to talk about the equity question. There's not a political indoctrination thing going on here. This is about creating conditions for kids to be safe and healthy, cared for and respected. And I'm just grateful I work for a board who's saying, you got to do this. This is our requirement. And our board, and I need to give a shout out to them. I've worked for 17 years, oh gosh, it's 19 now. I made a mistake. 19 years as an assistant superintendent or a superintendent, and I've worked with a ton of boards. And I'm not being political here, I'm just being honest. I know healthy boards and I know boards who struggle. And we have a gift in this community because we have a board that doesn't always agree, which I'm glad, because that's democracy, but they're respectful, they care, and they're smart, and they drive this district in a way that as a superintendent, I'm grateful every day that I get to work with them. And I think that they are amazing to our community as well. I gotta give them a shout out because sometimes in the last 2 years, if you've been listening, they haven't always gotten many shout outs. So I'm gonna do that as well. Thank you for this invitation. I really appreciated being with all of you too, and always happy to connect with members of our community, and in particular, your organization, because until you invited me, Betty, I didn't know about you. So now I do. So thank you.
Great. Well, what do I say? I don't know how to say thank you to all of you. And what a fascinating conversation, and hearing from different pieces and parts of our district and our kids. Oh, it's been a delight for me, and I'm sure I can speak for our entire group. Thank you so much, and let us know how we can keep going, especially Chavonta. I'd love to see your students again. The one that was so cute, I couldn't believe, oh, well, I'll tell you when I see you. It was sort of their first time performing, and he was scared so much, and they did great. So hopefully we'll get them more often, not just AAUW, but other community events. So we'll hope to see you all, and thank you for your service, your work, your commitment, and your passion for our students and our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and inviting me.
Oh, it's a delight.
Thank you.
And we're going to send you, we want you to be a member, Mimi, Chavonta, Vanessa, and John. We'd love to have you.
Excellent. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you to everyone. A great evening. I'm so impressed by these dedicated, thoughtful, energetic folks here.
Yeah. Okay, well, before you go, everyone, I'm sorry, I forgot. Joanne has two very important announcements about our future programs.
Yes, right. Well, I think we've already talked about Betty's graciously offered to have her a wonderful wine tasting event at her place, April 22nd in the evening. It's going to be a fundraiser for our local scholarship program. Our branch provides scholarships to they have to be at least a junior in college to help them complete their education. It's no strings attached, it's just a great program. So we're doing a fundraiser. It'll be a great evening with wine tasting and raffle drawings and
music,
refreshments and music. And then our next actually more educational program is going to be May 10th. Lucinda Jackson is going to be talking about leadership and sort of working with finding yourself as a retiree but still being relevant and finding things to do. So that's it.
Thank you very much.
And I think we've got a lot of great, great opportunities for synergy here with this group.
Yeah.
And thank you, Betty.
Okay, we'll see you next time, everyone. Come and sign up on our website. And tickets are also available at East Bay Flowers. So However, you can come to the Vineyard Stroll. We'd love to see you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Thank
Good
you,
night.
everybody. Thank you so much.